warm welcome here in our studio in Sarakunda. This is Star TV News and I am Mimnaju Fadera. In the headlines tonight, 6 samples taken to ascertain recovery status on COVID-19. Tough Africa Global donates $2 million to GCCI in the fight against the COVID-19. GAF denies reports of ex-CDS Kinta deducting pay of Gambian peacekeeping soldiers on the international scene. At least 22 missing after landslide floods in Kenya. Brazil's Bolsonaro joins protests against coronavirus restrictions. Germany eases virus restrictions as small businesses open. Well, those were the headlines, and now the news in details. The acting director of Health Services on Monday informed the media on the current status regarding coronavirus pandemic during the daily press briefing held in Banjul at Health Ministry. Modo El-Baji reports.
The acting director of Health Services, Dr. Mustafa Abite, reveals to the media on the number of tests conducted, those under quarantine, and a donation made by a philanthropy foundation to the Ministry of Health.
Been collected and sent for processing. Second consignment of donated laboratory consumables from Jack Ma Foundations have been received. Samples for a repeat test on 6 of the active cases will be taken today for testing to ascertain recovery status. 5 persons discharged from quarantine upon completion of their mandatory quarantine and testing. Their results were negative for COVID-19. A total of 71 contacts of newly confirmed cases have been traced. Currently, the country has 90 persons under quarantine and 7 active cases, and there is no probable case. Globally, since the 31st of December 2019, and as of 19th April 2020, a total of 2,405,325 cases of COVID-19 have been reported. Of these, 164,930 deaths were registered and 624,911 recovered from the disease. Senegal recorded 367 confirmed cases. They have 220 recoveries and 3 deaths.
Dr. Bitte outlined that the country currently has 90 people under quarantine, while 261 people completed quarantine, and he further set light on the ministry's next step towards the global pandemic.
Regarding our next steps, the Ministry of Health will embark on the following. So, Department of Social Welfare and other actors to work on modalities of receiving Quranic students returning from Senegal, to expand testing criteria to test more people from all regions in the country, conduct more step-down trainings at regional and facility levels, strengthen the rapid response teams and contact tracing teams at all regions, encourage public reporting and self-reporting of suspected cases through the toll-free line 1025. Contact listing and thorough tracing of contacts of newly confirmed cases. Enforcement of the letter and spirit of restriction orders contained in the state of the emergency declared.
On behalf of the Ministry of Health, Dr. Bitte acknowledged the efforts of the Gambian artists, poets, cultural troops, for their commendable efforts in the fight against the global pandemic. He also appealed to the general public to be using the locally tailored face masks as part of efforts to prevent themselves from the coronavirus. Reporting for Star TV, I am Modu El-Baji.
Earlier today, Tough Africa Global Company donated a sum of $2 million to the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, GCCI, as part of their contribution in the fight against the coronavirus. Well, Buntakoli attended the presentation held at the Ndeman Clinic in Bakau, and China reports.
The killer disease, declared a pandemic by the WHO, has brought everything in the country to stand still after the Gambia confirmed her first case in March. Speaking at the presentation ceremony, the CEO and founder of Tough Africa Global Company, Mustafa Njai, said as part of his company's social and corporate responsibilities, they have diverted all their funds, mainly for youth development, into the fight against COVID-19.
Of our corporate social responsibility, we have diverted all our funds, which we had used before, mainly on youth development, into fighting COVID-19. So therefore, we have a pledge to make for this occasion, which probably we will list out later. You will see the check, $2 million that will be contributed as part of the renovation of Ndeban Clinic.
Mr. Njai gave a brief explanation of what the $2 million will be used for, and why they have decided to partner with GCCI in the fight against the pandemic. He noted that it is meant to help renovate the Ndeban Clinic so that it could be turned into a COVID-19 treatment center.
We're here because we all know that there is a global pandemic, which is COVID-19, and it is everyone's problem. We are aware that, yes, it is a problem in the Gambia, and for that reason, Tough Africa Global, through its foundation, is coming on board to partner with the GCCI to assist government in fighting this disease. In our own part, we're here at Ndeban Clinic. As probably some of you are aware, Ndeban was one time the former president's treatment clinic, and we were approached by the government that they want to use it as an isolation center and treatment center. Actually, I think to be precise, it will be the major treatment center within the peri-urban area, which is most populated.
The Chief Executive Officer of GCCI, Aliu Sek, expressed sincere appreciation to have received the donation on behalf of his company. He confirmed that Mustafa Njai have been instrumental in helping with their $2 million telethon pledge. Seka also update on some of the new development that have been achieved so far.
On behalf of the Gambia Chamber of Commerce, to be here this morning, following the request of the GCCI Businesses Against COVID-19 challenge, when we tried to mobilize some $20 million in support of efforts to fight the COVID-19. I'm pleased to say that over the last 3 weeks, we've been able to mobilize some $15 million in addition to a new van purchased by the UNDP of over $3 million. So today's generous donation of Tough Global of $2 million takes us to the budget of $20 million that we had planned. So thank you, Mr. Njai, for making us reach that target.
Ndeban Clinic is located in Bakau Newtown. It has been used as a treatment center and was initially called Jack Fall, as many knew it. But the place has its name changed to Ndeban Clinic when former President Yahya Jammeh took ownership of the place and turned it into his HIV and AIDS treatment center. For Star TV News, I am Binta Kuli.
The Gambia Armed Forces, GAF, has categorically reported media reports by Gambian American-based online freedom newspaper that soldiers who recently completed their peacekeeping mission in Darfur were deducted of their pay by the former Chief of Defense Staff, General Masani Kinte. In a statement, the High Command of the Army said these allegations are unfounded and malicious. Jacqueline Colley files in this report.
On the 8th of April 2020, the Freedom newspaper reported some Gambian soldiers who recently finished their peacekeeping mission to Darfur, Sudan, have accused the former Army Chief of Defense Staff, General Masani Kinte, and his finance team of allegedly deducting $22,500,000 from their UN pay. The disgruntled soldiers were part of GAMCOI 21 contingent. They had served 9 months before their return. In the statement, the Army said 208 troops left the Gambia on Saturday, 24th March 2018 for Darfur. for a year United Nations mission. On 13 July 2018, the UN Secretary Council decided through Resolution 2429 to draw down and reconfigure the UNAMID peacekeeping force as a result of the general improvement in security conditions across Darfur. Consequently, the TCCs, including Senegal, Nepal, Pakistan, and Ethiopia, repatriated their contingents in line with the UNAMID drawdown plan. Similarly, the Gambia, Rwanda, and Kenya were among those to only draw down. In the case of the Gambia, a total of 76 personnel, including one soldier that died from natural causes in the mission area, were repatriated, therefore reducing the strength of the GAMCOI 21 to 132 personnel. Meanwhile, it may be instructive to state that the Gambia contingent continued to serve as the force headquarters protection force as well as providing communication support, admin functions to the mission headquarters. The statement continues. Furthermore, on Sunday, 30th December 2018, the 75 troops of GAMCOI 21 were repatriated and arrived in the Gambia after 9 months, 3 days in the mission area. However, it is important to state here that the initial repatriation date was 27 December 2018, and their mission allowances were computed based on this initial date. The troops were received on arrival by the GAV High Command, and the usual debriefing procedures, which centered predominantly on payment of their repatriated soldiers' mission allowances, was conducted at Yundum Barracks. For transparency purpose, a detailed explanation of the computation of their allowances was done in the presence of the contingent and all the relevant stakeholders, including Commandant Defense Headquarters Camp. Eventually, each member of the contingent was paid $11,219 after deduction of 10% from their gross pay and recovery of $283 departure advance in accordance with the pre-deployment financial agreement. An additional supplementary payment of $218 was made to each of the members of the repatriation team for the extra 3 days spent in the mission area beyond their initial repatriation date, including the mission allowance increment from July 2018 to December 2019. It may interest the general public to know that this additional payment of 3 days allowances was paid at the expense of the Gambian government from the GAV peacekeeping account because the UNAMID payment did not cover the extra 3 days spent outside the official repatriation date. This action by GAV demonstrated absolute transparency and responsibility by paying troops according to their entitlement. Furthermore, it may also be relevant to emphatically state that the United Nations has one of the most professional but stringent administrative procedures, especially with regards to payment of its personnel and troops serving in mission areas. Furthermore, there is no iota of truth in the assertion by the Freedom newspaper that the armed forces spokesperson, Major Lamin K. Sanyang, could not be reached. There was no point in time, be it during the day or night, that the GAV spokesperson was contacted by journalists either in the Gambia or outside, or even pandering by himself that the spokesperson had not answered, especially on this matter. It is therefore evident and very unfortunate that some people, for lack of integrity, will go all out to denigrate their own armed forces for ulterior motives. In the interest of our national peace and security, it is necessary to report facts rather than unfounded stories about our armed forces or our country. Finally, the Gambia Armed Forces wishes to assure the general public of its readiness and commitment to maintain its professionalism while at the same time subjecting itself to civil authority. Jacqueline Colley, reporting for Star TV News.
And now the news beyond our borders. A search operation is underway in Western Kenya for at least 22 people who disappeared during a devastating flash flood. Homes and markets were swept away after the rain triggered a landslide, killing 12 people. The disaster is in the same area where a landslide has killed dozens of Kenyans 5 months ago. Well, Al Jazeera's Katrin Soy reports from the Western Kenya.
Flying over this scenic terrain in Western Kenya, it's hard to miss the devastation on the ground. It was caused by a huge mudslide after 2 rivers burst their banks. It's been raining heavily for days in the more mountainous areas, and the impact is felt in this area in the Kenyan counties of Elgeyo Marakwet and West Pokot. This is where Chesegon Market stood until rocks came crashing down, also destroying homes, shops and restaurants. Hundreds of people were in the town market on Saturday afternoon. Stanley Corey ran a butcher's shop. and was hoping to sell 24 goats that day. All but 4 were swept away by the torrent of mud.
I want people to leave this area when the rumbling started, but they would not believe me. They did not think the water would get there. Now we have lost many of our loved ones as well as our cattle, goats and other property.
This was a thriving trading center in a town of about 3,000 people. Those we talked to said when they heard rumbling up the escarpment and saw water gushing down, they ran for safety, but others were not so lucky. Several people have died. Dozens are still missing. Rescue operations by the government, Red Cross and other agencies are still going on.
Among the bodies retrieved so far, a 14-year-old girl. The area is difficult to get to. Roads were swept away and bridges downed. Without heavy equipment to help dig through the rubble, young volunteers use sticks to look for bodies. The volunteers have also rescued several people, including Evelyn Kutoi.
The water was so much, I just let it take me. I don't know how long I was in it, but it felt like an hour. I thought I would die. Every time I found a tree branch to hold on to, the water would take me back under. I just don't know how I survived.
She's among thousands who've lost everything. Many are sheltering with neighbors who are on higher ground. The same area was struck by another mudslide, killing 60 people last November. The government says the community needs to move to safer ground. Many, like Evelyn, tell us they have nowhere else to go. Catherine Soy, Al Jazeera, Chesagon, Western Kenya.
Brazil has more than 40,000 infections and 2,500 deaths from the coronavirus pandemic, making it the worst affected country in Latin America. But President Jair Bolsonaro has been eager to get the country back on its feet economically. On Sunday, he joined protesters calling for the virus restrictions to be lifted and said the military still intervene. But the governors who imposed these curbs have denounced Bolsonaro's actions. Al Jazeera's John Holman reports.
For critics of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, this rally was another outrage, perhaps the most serious since coronavirus began. He spoke to supporters outside of the Brazilian army headquarters. Many of them called for Congress to be closed and even a military intervention to get their and his wish, an end to the quarantine measures imposed by many state governments.
We don't want to negotiate anything. What we want is action for Brazil.
He's desperate for people to get back to work, despite Brazil already having the highest rate of coronavirus cases in Latin America.
70% will be infected. If not today, then next week or next month. It's a reality. We have to take care of the elderly and those with health problems. The rest have to be careful but have to work.
There's widespread opposition to that and to him.
Yesterday, there was a movement of Brazilian governors. 20 out of 27 governors of Brazil, state governors, they have signed a document in defense of democracy and, of course, repudiating Bolsonaro's participation in that demonstration. So that happened yesterday, and 20 out of 27. This is significant.
There are more than 40,000 COVID cases in Brazil. Hospitals are stretched to the limit. This video shows one in the Amazonian city of Manaus, with bodies resting beside living patients. Even as the president spoke at the rally, he was coughing. He's angered many with his distaste for social distancing, but appearing with a crowd, some of whom called for the army to intervene and support him, brought wider condemnation. Brazil escaped military dictatorships only 35 years ago. The next day, the president seemed to make a U-turn.
We don't need to close anything. What we have here is democracy and respect for the Brazilian constitution.
But he still repeated his call for an end to quarantine measures in Brazil by next week. John Holman, Al Jazeera.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel has urged people to stay disciplined as some shops reopened for the first time since coronavirus curbs were imposed in late March. The leader of Europe's largest economy says a full shutdown will be inevitable if the number of infections rises again. Al Jazeera's Dominic Kane reports from Berlin.
For many weeks, Germany has been in lockdown, the possibility of inadvertent infection too high to allow most everyday life to go on. But now, in some states, many shops are open once more, as here in Cologne on Monday. A first step by the government to test how safe it is for economic life to resume.
Natürlich fällt das schwer.
Of course it is difficult, but if we now ease restrictions, then we don't know exactly what the repercussions will be, and that's why we have to take it slowly and a step at a time. It would be tragic if we knowingly relapsed and if we knowingly endangered these first successes.
And perhaps because of that fear, not everywhere in Germany has reopened for business. Some states want more stringent protective measures in place before opening stores.
So far, at least federally, the government is only encouraging, recommending people to wear these masks in public. But certainly some parts of this country, that is changing.
In the eastern state of Saxony, masks are now mandatory for people in public. And the conservative heartland of Bavaria is about to follow suit.
As of next week, we'll introduce a mouth-nose mask obligation. This will be in place for all public transport for all shops, including those that have been open all this time. We are the first state in West Germany to do this.
And then there's the dilemma of how to reopen schools safely. Most will remain closed until early May, but some have now gone back to allow teenagers to sit important end-of-year exams.
Natürlich bin ich etwas beunruhigt.
Of course I'm somewhat worried. The more students there are in the building, the more complicated it gets to stick to the framework conditions. Ultimately, we're talking about youths here who might not always be in a position to evaluate the dangers 100%.
Which sounds very much like the dilemma ministers are facing right now. Easing restrictions should help the economy, but could cause a second wave of infections. Dominic Kane, Al Jazeera, Berlin.
And now, before we end the news, a recap of our main headlines. 6 samples taken to ascertain recovery status on COVID-19. Tough Africa Global donates $2 million to GCCI in the fight against the COVID-19. GAF denies reports of ex-CDS Kinte deducting pay of Gambian peacekeeping soldiers. At least 22 missing after landslide floods in Kenya. Brazil's Bolsonaro joins protests against coronavirus restrictions. Germany eases virus restrictions as small businesses open. Well, that's all for this edition of the news. Please enjoy the rest of our programs and join us tomorrow for more news. Thanks for watching.